In today's fast-changing business landscape, sales transformation is driven by the intelligent use of data, automation, and AI. In this live session, discover how SAP leverages its own cloud solutions, business AI, and data integration to simplify customer journeys, enhance efficiency, and connect technology end-to-end for smarter and scalable decision-making. Welcome, everyone, to today's live expert session. We're thrilled to have you join us. I'm pleased to have here with me Marius Weigand, Vice President of Commercial Process and Technology Transformation, Customer and Partner Processes and IT at SAP SE. Marius is an experienced transformation management professional with over 15 years of experience in strategic consulting, transformation management. He's excited to drive SAP's lead to cash transformation across processes, business, and IT towards a cloud-native North Star using automation and AI as key enablers. Marius is a former member of SAP's Corporate Strategy Group. He holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and MSc from the European Business School. And now, without further ado, over to you, Marius.
Yeah, welcome, Tania. Welcome everybody on the screen. Good morning, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me well on that special date, 11/11. Yeah, so for the ones in Germany, everybody knows the crazy time of Carnival is beginning. So hello to everybody who's celebrating that today. And there's St. Martin. So very special day to host the session. Tania, thanks for having me. I believe what I'm gonna share here is something that many customers actually face in one or the other way. I mean, I'm frequent in one-on-one customer discussions as well, and I think that was also the idea why we said let's share it to the broader audience. If okay for you, I would take over and share the screen.
Yes, please.
So let's hope that one works. Let me know.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, that's awesome. There we go. Amazing. So yeah, as Tania said, advancing sales transformation at SAP with AI, cloud, and data integration. That's what I'm going to talk about today. And let's have a brief look of what the session is really about. So I'm going to give you a bit of the why, the what, and the how of our sales transformation. So why do we need to fundamentally rethink how we do our go-to-market and our go-to-market processes when shifting to the cloud? Second, I'm going to talk a bit about, like every good team, what's our game plan for doing so? And third, how do we actually execute our game plan? What are insights that we've taken away, and what would be recommendations that we have for anybody out there who might have similar challenges that you're facing? So let's get into the weeds. Let's look at the why. So I want to start with a very interesting and encouraging curve, and it's actually SAP's cloud revenue. And you can see it's the classical hockey stick curve you would be wishing for, right? When you think about cloud revenue. Cloud revenues are picking up, and it means customers like our products. They start consuming, they consume more and more and more. So that's a beautiful situation. But from us on the operations side, that actually comes with some challenges. And that's I brought you a little chart. Let me get a laser pointer here, because it's a bit complex, but I'm going to explain it. So what we have on the x-axis is certain groups of average deal size that we're doing. So basically on the right side, you see we have a few deals, that's the line, with very high average value, that would be the x-axis, and that result in very much high value actually being transacted in this group of deals. Yeah. So the further you go to left, the smaller the average deal size gets. And at the same time, you see that the number of transactions is increasing. And what's actually really important is the difference between those two lines. So the lower line is basically showing 2021 number of transactions in each of that value buckets or average deal size buckets, while the blue one is showing last year. I can tell you this year it's getting even steeper. So the key message here is when moving to the cloud, the average deal size per transaction is actually getting smaller. The number of transaction is increasing, right? And when you think about it, it's actually quite normal, right? You start with something, you try it out, you as customers consume it, you consume a bit more, and it's not that classical every few years we're meeting and negotiating a really big contract anymore, right? That still exists and it's important, but at the same time you see the number of transactions is actually increasing. So what does it mean for us? We actually have two buckets in our lead to cash journey that we need to optimize for. The one remains important. It's really the big transactions that are there, that will stick around for the next years and that remain to be important. We need to make sure we're very pragmatic in relieving the pain in these transactions, right? Because every big transaction always has a lot of complexity that needs to be handled. On the other side, and that's the new piece, we now need a scalable platform to actually transact our volume and enable that hockey stick to get steeper and steeper and steeper. And this is what our transformation is really about. So what we need is automation, standardization in the processes, scalable processes and platforms enabled by AI. Yeah, because only that will enable us to have a platform that really unlocks the spin wheel effect of scaling at an efficient process level, at efficient and right costs per single transaction. Yeah, so that's really important to take in mind. So next one, now we know the why. Yeah, we need a scalable platform to be able to support our cloud growth. That's working very different than how we've done lead to cash processes in the past. So now let's look at, and as I said, as every good team, we came up with a game plan. And the first thing that's really important is it's not a technology transformation alone. It's a business process transformation and a technology transformation that need to fit together. They need to work in synchronization, because otherwise you're defining something, executing something on the technology side that's maybe not adapted or followed through the business. So that's the first really important topic. Yeah? That's why I said it takes more than one player to win the game. It's completely cross-functional. It's especially the sales teams, when you think about it, it's legal, it's compliance, it's finance. They all play a significant role in that lead to cash process end to end. So let's have a brief look at the game plan that we developed. And let me get the laser pointer again. I want to start on the left. Yeah. So when we started our journey, when it was clear, okay, we need to get to a scalable platform, we need to revamp our processes to something that's much more standardized and automated. We looked into, are we actually set up organizationally to support this journey? And we said, no, we are not. Because at the starting point, we had a business process ownership completely dispersed in the organization, sometimes sitting within the business, sometimes sitting within an operations unit, sometimes sitting with IT. So the first step was to take the business process ownership layer and consolidate it within the IT, right? And that made us a corporate process and IT function, and not an IT function alone anymore. Why was that so important? Well, taking that step means we have a clear interface between the process that needs to be improved. We have ownership for the process that needs to be improved, and our business stakeholders. So that was the foundation basically to start the journey. And I think I've talked to several customers who are on that journey of figuring out how to work out that setup right. But for us, it was a critical enabler, step one. The second piece was then to align on the methodology and tools. So we used some sprint methodology to really drumbeat through the steps that I'm going to show you further to the right. And it was important that we have the right KPI set, the right methodologies and tool set. And then basically you see it's starting to fork here, right? So based on what we've done here, on the one hand, we established process measurement and transparency to make sure that the process that we're making can actually be measured, and made sure that we measure and improve and measure and improve. On the execution side, we have two big streams that are or have been established. The one is looking at you might recognize the color from the beginning, in building the scalable platform to support the volume. There we went through a tech-based, sprint-based blueprinting process to, in a greenfield approach, go after how should the new standardized and scalable process look like. Selected pilot LOBs where we set it live with an MVP mode and then start expanding it LOB for LOB. And at the same time, we looked at the bucket right in our scale, right, where we have the big deals that still need to be supported on. Are there ways for back office automation? Are there things where we can optimize seller experience? And what are elements that we are defining up here that we can already take over as North Star? Right, so to make sure the most important topics in today's world, in today's large scale transaction world, are also taken care of. And then once that journey on the top is basically built, that scalable platform is built, we start migrating the volume once we see that the KPIs are actually hitting the targets that we've set. Yeah, that's a bit the overall game plan. I think it fits very nicely. And the most important thing now comes to the left. Yeah, while we're doing that, we have to always think AI first. And I give you some short examples and going to do some more deep dives later in the presentation, right? On the one side, when you think about the optimized for value, there are some things that with current AI capabilities, you can solve much easier. Yeah, both on the I would say automation tasks, yeah, to just speed up things. When you think about approvals, when you think about cash processes, automation, but there are also things that make seller experience easier when you have a lot of terms, a lot of conditions that you have to know, and just to figure out what to do in certain situations. When building the new world, we have to understand how agentic AI works and what are prerequisites that you need to have in place to actually tap into agentic more or less right away. And I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive on that. So, as I said, that's the game plan. I think it's pretty universal and maybe a good idea for some of you to kind of think through when you're thinking about what's your way of transforming your processes, your lead to cash process. Good. That brings us to the how. So I want to double click in some of those topics as part of the execution plan. And also going to share some of our lessons learned, basically, that we had along the journey. And the journey is not over, so maybe there's a follow-up at some point in time to share some more. There you go. So as I said, I'm going to do 3 deep dives. The one is looking into the process ownership topic and the methodology and the tools. The second one is the scaling for volume piece. So the top right part, how we went through the blueprint pilot and XLOB part. And then last but not least, I wanted to do a little double click on how we think about AI. And let me bring that one up. I think I talked already about the end-to-end process ownership and why this is important. Maybe one more sentence around this. Yeah? While it is important that we have an end-to-end ownership and we really think the process end-to-end to transform it and to simplify it, there was a reason why we said the IT function is actually the function who should be the one that's the transformation driver. Yeah? When you think about it, sales, finance, legal, all these functions, they're actually verticals by nature, right? And that's how they look at the problems. IT is one of the very, very few functions that scans across, right? So at least on our side, IT is centralized, right? And all the different tools and process steps that support these different business functions were sitting within IT. So it was a logical next step to then take the process ownership in, because we are enabled to look at the process end to end and actually make sure we do the same engagement model towards all of our business stakeholders to drive that transformation along the process. When talking about methodologies and tools, so once that was in place, right, we need to train the muscle on how we actually work with the business to drive that transformation. And what was important for us, we basically started with customer value journeys. So really thinking through in that cloud world, how does a customer value journey look like? What are the different buying personas? And we actually used Figma to map it out, right? The second one was then to look at the process that's underlying these journeys and understand what are the key KPIs that we want to influence and what's our ambition against it. So for example, when you look at the average time it takes for deal approval, something we wanted to cut down significantly. The time it takes for a deal to be closed and transacted through the contracting system, something where we said we want to reduce the time significantly and we want to automate a lot. The time we take for negotiating certain terms and where we allow for non-standard deals. We wanted to reduce the number of non-standard deals significantly by upping our master cloud contract agreement, so our standard terms, making sure they're up to standard, so that for the smaller deals and smaller customers, we can be very clear. Look, these are really good terms, also in comparison to the market. And if our contracting relationship is only that size, that's actually what we should be contracting under to make life easy for both sides, right? So that was super important to define those process KPIs along the journey and agree with the business on how does good look like in a scalable platform that's supporting our cloud business. The third thing that was really important was a structured decision-making and documentation approach, right? So while the KPIs were documented, we also set something up we called design authority boards, right? So basically, we created a logging mechanism where the 120 plus decisions that we identified that need to be taken along the end-to-end process. So how should the process look like? Do we want to go left and right? Do we want to go more or less automated? How these decisions can be logged in, approved by all the key stakeholders, stored, and we had a very clear process to reopen that at some point in time. Only very few people were allowed to reopen. So we were forcing some very solid discussion and alignment and decision in a very structured way that got signed off, documented, and is now our North Star, that whenever somebody comes like, I want a different, we can say, well, we had that discussion. So do we officially want to reopen it, or do we stick with our ambition? And obviously there are things that we want to reopen, but we have a very, very clear baseline that we can work against. So that was also super important to be sure that we can actually know what we're building afterwards. And then last but not least, we were lucky because we were obviously allowed to use LeanIX and Signavio heavily, both for the process analysis in the beginning, but also for the documentation of the capabilities and the forward-looking measurement of how is process performance improving. And second, WalkMe is a tool that we could use from the beginning, that we had the first tools live to actually give guidance to the users on how to quicker adapt to a new system landscape. So coming to the next part. So that was basically the setup and laying the foundation. Now we really look into how have we defined this new cloud platform that we're actually building out, the new end-to-end lead to cash process for cloud. As I said, we went through 3 stages. First, blueprinting with 3, 4, 5 selected LOBs who are closer to the cloud world than some others. Then actually building the pilot for first LOB, so kind of MVP approach, make it quick, make it small, and then expand and adapt it from there. So what was important on the process side is that we adopted a greenfield approach, right? So we didn't start with what's our process today and how do we need to improve certain elements. We said, well, if I would be implementing new SAP systems, and I would be guided by an SI or something, how would I implement it now to stay as close to standard as possible, right? So we had a greenfield approach to that. And that way kind of avoided to be drawn back by how we do things today too much. The second one was really thinking about how does a new low-touch process, also AI or automation, right, in some elements, how would it work if you really do it low-touch, no-touch? Yeah, that was always question number 1. The third one, as I just explained, build small, test, and expand. Right, so we by purpose only selected a few of the LOBs to do the blueprinting. If you would have everybody in the room, the discussion would go on for 3 years, right? Build small for the first one, test and expand. So we have some proof points and can always ask the question, why doesn't it fit for you? For that LOB, it actually fits. Versus having the discussion upfront without a system that's going on a more theoretical level, right? So that enabled us to be much quicker. And then last but not least, we were also lucky to be allowed to use our latest cloud solutions, right? So we start with Sales Cloud as the core element on the CRM space, from sales planning to lead management to opportunity management. What is a lucky for us state-of-the-art product that's from the UI UX side very well received on the IE, so on the seller side, right? That's a very good starting point and very quickly to implement. Second, we are using CPQ 2.0, also as close to standard as possible for CMET-based or configuration-based simplified quoting. And then we go into the latest SOM CI FICA that we have on the market, right? So for us, we can use a lot of quote unquote innovation out of the box by implementing those products, and they're already defining a certain standard and how the process should look like, right? And the question was always, why don't we what's the benefit of not sticking to that standard? Instead of defining the process somewhere else, we said, okay, there's a standard how you do this process step. Is there benefit of customizing away from it? And with that, we're, at least for now, we stayed like 80% close to standard, 20% we made very deliberate decisions on where we believe we should deviate, also from what the market standard maybe is, because it's a USP for us in the way we do our selling, or because SAP is very, very different in these certain 20% of the elements. But there needs to be a clear case for that. So ultimately, when you think about the timing a bit, right, for the blueprinting phase, it took like 5-6 months. Yeah, so we did this a bit on steroids in a very drumbeated approach, a bit like delivery sprints. So always two weeks for a certain set of key design decisions, another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, and then we did a big getting everybody physically together. Work through all the results, get them approved, do a retro, do a forward planning, and then go back and work, and then do that again. So we did this basically 3 times with some plus minus weeks and a bit of then documenting the solution architecture and so on afterwards. So that after something like half a year plus, we had a pretty good understanding of what needs to be built, including the respective increments, features, user stories, capabilities, and so on. It took us another roughly half a year to set up the whole landscape, and the most important challenge was to actually connect it to our existing systems that are common components, be it on the provisioning side, being it on the master data, so all the customer data, being it on the employee data. So the integrations, we had more than 100 that needed to be set up, were probably the biggest challenge. I mean, setting up the systems actually was quite fast, so that after 6 months, we had a first pilot end-to-end live to be able to do the transactions. What I think is also a pretty good timeline. So we have the first LOB live, or with the share of their business, basically the standalone deals that are not co-sold with other LOBs for now, right? And from that on, we're now onboarding product SKUs until the next LOB is complete, and so on, to really kind of build out the catalog that we can sell through this new runway, or through this new scalable platform for lead to cash, and can start onboarding more and more sellers. Good. I've been talking a lot. That's a bit, I would say, to the approach. I hope that's getting clear. Sorry, there we go. And with that, let's come to the AI topic, right? And I know AI is a bit of the buzzword of not even of the months, of the year, but obviously when you think something new at those times that we have right now, you cannot get around the question of how will it work with AI? Why don't you use AI? So, I mean, I said earlier, we always thought about how can we drive a process that most automated, most simple, most lean. One of the key questions was always, okay, why not automate and use AI? Yeah. So that was really one of the key questions we asked for many of our key design decisions. Is it something you can automate? Is it something where you can use AI right away, or where you should be using AI in a step 2 or 3? And if we will be using AI in a step 2 or 3, what would it mean for the decision that we need to take now, right? So that we always consider it. It also means we have a lot of new opportunities. When you think about something like Sales Cloud, there are not a lot of AI features built in that you can basically flip on. Yeah, so you can give access to that for your sellers right away once the system is deployed, and you switch the standard AI features on, like account synapses, or I would say the classics of pre-wiring certain emails that are sent out to the customers, perspectives on quality of leads and what are the next topics, next opportunities that AEs should be working on. So there are some things that, I mean, would have required a lot of custom build beforehand, and you couldn't consider for day one to get anybody who needs to move the system now to get excited. I mean, with AI, there are some elements that you can be much faster. That goes hand in hand with an improved customer experience, right? Because, I mean, everybody's getting used to using ChatGPT, Claude, all the other tools out there right now. So when you build this in, people will know how to use it. Yeah? So it also makes adoption easier if you can enable some AI supported elements from the beginning. And last but not least, but that's more the outcome, it's more efficient. And also more effective, right? I would assume, or we assume, that leads that are being groomed and brought forward in the process with AI support, and opportunities that are being worked on with AI support actually bring better outcomes than without it. So on the AI topic, I want to bring you another thought that we've been discussing quite a bit. Yeah? So when you think about the power of AI in our processes, you can roughly think about 3 stages. So the first stage is an agent-enhanced execution. Right? So we have specialized AI agents that support the human in kind of the tasks that they have today, right? So they become more efficient, they probably create better outcomes. The second one is actually agent-driven collaboration. So actually the agents drive the process, and they pull in the humans when they need it, hand in hand. And the third stage would be an agent-to-agent economy. So actually agents interacting with each other. I think in many companies and also at SAP, there are lots of engagements happening, especially around figuring out or collecting ideas around what are AI use cases. Yeah. Quite naturally, most of the use cases end up in category 1. Yeah, so basically, sellers are going to come and say, well, it would be nice to have somebody who's doing the quote for me, just entering something in a chat screen. Or somebody would be like telling me what's the next best opportunity with customer XYZ, what should I start pitching? That's great. And all these tools have a lot of value. And they need to be built as a foundation. But we believe that number 2, agent-driven collaboration, is actually the midterm target picture that we should go after. Right? So really thinking about, especially when you think about volume and scale, agent-driven marketing, leads coming in, agents kind of working on the leads, making sure they're going into the right channels, making sure customers who might have like expressed some interest get the right information up front, and then they trigger somebody who is doing a demo, or they might send them to somewhere where they can kind of self-serve some demos. Yeah, that's really how we think about it. So while it makes sense to build this agent-enhanced execution, we also need to think about how does it ultimately lead to a much more end-to-end agent collaboration model along the process. Yeah, and I think that's the task that we have as IT within a larger company, driving the process innovation. Not only take the intake of ideas that are all valid and that should be built, but also think about the next step, how the world will work or how the process will work in a year from now, and make sure that while we're building one, we're actually building it in a cohesive manner that agent-driven collaboration is enabled already, or it's let's say the path to agent-driven collaboration is quick. And with that, I want to give you just and it's very illustrative, just a hint on how we think about it, right? So when you think about how the future will look like, right, and that's a typical, I would say, agentic architecture, right? There's an orchestration layer where there's an orchestrator with the respective LLM sitting, and there's an agent-to-agent gateway. It's basically a log where it's described where, like, what's the capabilities of the agents, the team that's built out that we can use to get a certain outcome, right? There's a communication layer where the agents are actually interacting and trying to solve the task that they're given. There are specified agents who are sitting on an LLM that's actually optimized for a task, and it's something where I would say the big debate: how many do we need? How universal are certain LLMs? How much better are LLMs actually getting? Yeah, but in our case, you could think about something like quote agent, product configuration, pricing, deal optimizer, compliance, and so on agents, right? To enable those agents, they need to be able to get the data in a very structured way, right? And I think MCP servers in the MCP layer is the way to go, or at least the latest developments that we see in the market and that we're also adapting to make sure the data that's actually sitting in the different systems and in the different data sources can be consumed in the right way. It's consumed in a certain structured way, and the agents can perform their tasks as effective as possible with at least as little variance as possible. And I think the big mindset change, besides what I've shown on the slide before, coming from purely human support to actually thinking agent first, here is we're coming from a world of predefining the process, and we kind of still are, to giving a task to the agents, and they will figure out the process over time, and the process will kind of naturally evolve, right? So it's not that we feed the process with a task to say, well, you do the quote first, or you do the product configuration first, and you create a quote, you optimize the pricing, and then you go to compliance once before it's sent to the customer. I don't know, right? You give them a task saying, we want, I don't know, X hundred deals of type XYZ in the next year with a certain value associated to it or a certain margin and so on, and they will start working on it. Or you could throw a bunch of leads in that machine and say optimize for, and then you could say, well, how important is it to do the deals quickly, do the deals at higher margin, do the deals as big as possible, highest possible likelihood of adoption, or whatever you think is the most relevant business outcome that you desire, right? So I just want to show you that one as a first outlook on how we think about it, this is what's going to come in a year and what we're working on as part of the overall transformation, and why it's so important to move to a consistent landscape, move to a scalable landscape that you can then, if you use things like Business Data Cloud, right, can start building agentic use cases on. And we always keep that in mind while building out the process. Yeah? So I've been talking almost half an hour, so I think we still have a bit of time. So what's important? Yeah, what are the key takeaways that you have to keep in mind when doing such a transformation? As I said, there's a game plan, but there's a short-term and long-term benefits that you need to show, right? So you cannot only work on the upper part, because if that needs some time, you also need to optimize in today's world. Yeah. So how much do you invest? Where do you do it with the same teams? Do you do it with different teams? In our scenario, we started by purpose with a different team working on the upper part, and we're now bringing it closer together that the target is clear, and try to move as much as we can to the North Star right away. And the second one is, and that's connected to this, avoid taking over the old processes. Yeah, don't start with the old process necessarily. Think greenfield. Think, okay, if I would start kind of building that out greenfield, how would I do it? What's kind of standard that's in the systems provided? Why would I customize it? Yeah, is it really creating a value? So ask a lot of why questions while going through the, as we call it, key design decisions along the process. Third, make cloud a reality. Use the capabilities that cloud, you could also say AI, get to the table. Yeah. So, and if you don't do, or if you're too much sticking in the old process, saying, but that's how we do it today, it will be really, really hard to adopt cloud and to adopt an AI first mindset. What's number 4? Yeah. So I think I've talked a lot about AI. So really thinking about, can we automate? Can we use AI? How will AI change the interaction that the user has with the whole system landscape ultimately? And then last but not least, it's often forgotten. It's a huge change. It's a huge change for everybody who's involved in the process, on the sales side, but also all the other business stakeholders. Nobody has worked in that scalable manner so far. And you will drive a lot of resistance, or identify a lot of resistance, and saying, well, but we need this. And so having a strong top-down support and strong kind of decision-making machine, logging the decisions, having the structure, having a clear organizational setup really helps to also drive the decision-making and the change management. But I think it's something that's very often overlooked, and it's super impossible, because ultimately everybody has to believe into the North Star, has to understand the North Star we are going after, because if people don't really, if they are not 100% in, it will really, really hard and most likely break in execution. Okay, and with that, I come to my summary in a good sense of the why, what, and how. So what you should take away is the cloud growth is accelerating. So we're going to have more deals, we have smaller entry point deals, and we have much higher volume to handle. Second, the customer behavior shifts. We have faster deal cycles, we have easier up and cross-sell, self-service. All these motions are becoming essential to be successful. Third, that means we need to scale. We need automation, standardization, a scalable platform. So how does the game plan look like? The what? We need a synchronized transformation, so business process redesign and technology transformation. We need a common foundation. That means shared methodology, well understood KPIs and targets, tools to measure the progress, and migrate the volumes gradually, and ultimately also lock in the decisions that we have. Last but not least, accelerators like Signavio, like LeanIX, like WalkMe helped us a lot to drive the transparency initially, help with the enablement, but also track the progress that we make in terms of process improvements. So on the how, key takeaway, mindset and execution, AI first mindset, design processes for automation and AI. Ask the why questions. Ask why not automate. And stick to the key design principles. Yeah? Optimize the trade-offs between short-term and long-term, avoid all processes, think greenfield, and make cloud and AI a reality, because it's around the corner. And I want to end my my very brief session with a quote that I like a lot from from a business writer. When you focus on problems, you'll have more problems. When you focus on possibilities, you will have more opportunities. And I think that that's a very nice summary on how we approached it with the greenfield thinking. So not starting at our old problems, not starting at the old process and trying to fix a bit here, fix a bit there, but really going out there and saying, hey, cloud, AI, what are the opportunities? What's the possibilities that we have to, if we would be reshaping a completely new process? And then go back and ask the why questions of should we do a bit custom here? Should we deviate a bit here? Yeah. So I think that was our motto. Focus on possibilities, and you will have more opportunities. And with that, I say thank you. Let's stay in touch. I know there's a Q&A coming, but feel free to add me on LinkedIn or write me on LinkedIn. I know there's a ton of other interesting sub series. Just a reminder here, and you can register for the series and rewatch some of the other interesting sessions. And yeah, thank you from my side for listening in. And back to you, Tania. I think you might have some questions in the chat that we should go through.
Absolutely. First of all, let me thank you for your excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it a lot. Perhaps you want to unshare the screen. So hopefully this time we'll be on full screen, both of us. So great, thank you. Let me ask the question we have in the chat. So how will the mentioned North Star architecture help accelerate SAP's cloud transformation across lines of business in 2026 and beyond?
Oh, it's a good and long question. So I think I tried to put it out there, right? The North Star architecture is a means to an end, right? It's supporting the business transformation with the right tools that we need to put in place, like Sales Cloud, like CPQ, like the SOM system, that support building out that leaner and standardized process that ultimately gets us to the better business outcome. So very concretely, we have a first LOB that's live, that's already transacting in this much leaner, much more standard way of doing business. Next step will be to go much broader on actually across 4 or 5 LOBs, but for certain customer segments, so net new customers, because that takes out the migration challenges that you might hit, right? And again, it will enable us to drive net new name generation much more efficiently. So that's really the benefit for the next year. And then when you look another year beyond, we look at adapting the full scope, right? And then every smaller deal or everybody who's working on a smaller deal that's a bit more standard should really benefit from that leaner and much more scalable process.
Thank you. We have a very good question, another question in the chat. How can teams prepare for the shift toward agent-driven collaboration? What new skills or roles will be most critical in that transition?
That's a very good question that we're also discussing a lot. Honestly, I think there's just a lot of information out there in the web, right? So, I mean, go to YouTube, figure out the latest and greatest, play a bit with the tools that are available so that you get an understanding of, and I've shown the architecture a bit, yeah, like how does agent AI architecture actually work? What's important, yeah? Understand what are data products. So BDC in our context, really make sure you understand the foundation, understand what an MCP server is, right? And what it does, how is AI embedded in that? What's the benefit of doing things in an MCP environment in terms of giving it a certain frame and structure, so that when your team is hit with that question, you actually know the basics and you go after, right? And I think the second thing is, yes, it's new skills, but it's also not. I think it's everybody needs to learn that, right? So you can't hire your way out of or into AI, yeah? Everybody needs to understand how it works, and it's rather about ring fencing a certain group of people that can dedicate to that topic and really go after it. While everybody else needs to be ready that that's the future, and you can draw more capacity in that stream over time. Yeah, but I mean, new skills, yeah, but I think it's really about enabling also a large chunk of the current population within IT and beyond. Yeah, also in terms of requesters from the business. I think I've shown these 3 stages of agentic evolution. It's quite natural that everybody's talking about the first piece, but you need to make sure that everybody understands the end game or the next level game is already there and playing a bit further out. So you not have the business requesting for a lot of stuff that actually is in AI almost yesterday, right? So I think it's really about enabling both IT at a broader scale, but also together with the business to make sure that the counterparties you're talking about or you're talking with to shape the future actually know what's going out or what's going on out there.
Thank you so much. And we have another question, which is really important for all our installed base, basically for all customers also. You mentioned avoiding all processes and thinking greenfield. How do we strike the right balance between leveraging existing systems and building new ones from scratch?
Yeah, I think it's a good one. So I think by purpose, we started with the greenfield thinking, as I said, and it was clear that we're going to use, in our case, a Sales Cloud V2, a CPQ system based on variant configuration, and then the latest private cloud SOM CI structure, right? So that enabled us to really think clean sheet. How would you design it, right? That was step 1. Step 2 was then to say, well, where does it need to integrate? Where do we need to adapt? What of the existing process is actually important enough to find a way into that? As I said, asking the why questions, right? So only if there's a really good business reason, a clear benefit, monetary benefit that could be defined, or it's a compliance reason or something, right? Then we started taking it in. Yeah, so we were more heavy on the greenfield side. It was clear that some elements are common components you need to connect to. But on the process side, we were trying to push the limit as far as we could using the standard of our standard software and then asking the tough why questions. While at the same time, in the existing world, right? So for the larger deals, what's running today, we looked at what are the most important pain points that we have today and have to improve the situation for the users as well, right? So you can't just work on the future and say, well, but for the next 3 years, no innovation will come to what you're using today, right? And I think that was the tougher balance to strike. So how much capacity do you put on which part? And at the end, it was I would say a bit of a numbers game. Yeah, so figuring out how big are the pain points in today's world, what's the impact, and then shifting based on that.
Great, thank you so much. We don't have another question in the chat. If you have any questions to the audience, please feel free to add them in the comments area underneath this video, and we will answer them for sure. And with this, once again, a big thank you to Marius for your excellent presentation, and a warm thank you to all attendees for joining. I hope you got a lot of value from this session, and I look forward to seeing you in our next session. Have a great day. Have a great evening, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me, Tania.